The planet is closing in on what the World Health Organization calls a tragic milestone: 5 million confirmed new coronavirus cases. The latest numbers show globally more than 328,000 people have died from COVID-19 since surfacing in China last December. The United States has recorded the most deaths at more than 93,000 from 1.5 million infections. The WHO is coming to grips with U.S. President Donald Trump's reform ultimatum, giving the organization 30 days to overhaul its operations. Otherwise, its biggest contributor would freeze its funding and consider pulling out altogether. In addition, WHO's Director General said they are very concerned about rising COVID-19 cases in low and middle income countries. Spain narrowly passed a measure extending a state of emergency, but in some neighborhoods of Madrid, Barcelona, and other cities, people walked in the streets banging pots and pans in protest at restrictions when people can leave their homes. Spain has eased some restrictions, allowing children outdoors and some shops and beaches to reopen, but it has a quarantine for overseas travelers and ordered all citizens, including children older than 6, to wear masks in public. Bolivian authorities fired the health minister Wednesday and opened an investigation of potential corruption. There are allegations officials bought ventilators at inflated prices, underscoring the global challenge to prevent fraud in the coronavirus pandemic. The Bolivian government received Inter-American Development Bank funds to buy the devices. Press reports say they paid nearly $30,000 each, sparking social media backlash. Bolivia state prosecutors said in a statement Wednesday 4th Health Ministry officials had been detained and some officials abroad would also be investigated. This is VOA News. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's considering gathering world leaders next month as originally planned before the virus pandemic. AP correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
The G7 summit was to be held at Camp David in about 3 weeks, but the president called it off in March and said the leaders would instead meet via video conference. This morning, he says he's considering rescheduling the summit around the same time, tweeting it would be a great sign to all, normalization. It's unclear, though, how the meeting could be arranged on such short notice. The White House stopped formal preparations 2 months ago, and the Trump administration's kept travel restrictions and quarantine requirements in place for travelers from Europe, home to 4 of the 7 nations. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
The Élysée said Wednesday French President Emmanuel Macron is prepared to attend the summit if the coronavirus health situation allows it. A French presidential official called the G7 a major meeting. Mozambique's top state lawyer said Wednesday the country has indicted 10 more people over a massive $2 billion secret loan scandal that plunged the country into its worst ever financial crisis. The latest indictments bring to 30 the number of defendants facing charges in the case. An independent audit found $500 million of the loans, which were deliberately hidden from the country's parliament and international donors, was diverted and remains unaccounted for. The U.S. Supreme Court temporarily blocks the House of Representatives from seeing the secret grand jury testimony from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. AP correspondent Tim McGuire reports.
In the unsigned order, the Supreme Court has at least delayed the release of grand jury testimony to the House Judiciary Committee until early this summer. A Washington federal appeals court ruled in March the document should be turned over because the committee's need to the material in its investigation of President Trump outweighs the Justice Department's interest in keeping that testimony secret. The committee first asked for the grand jury testimony last summer before President Trump's impeachment, but by the time the appeals court ruled, Trump had already been acquitted by the Senate. Tim McGuire, Washington.
Britain conceded Wednesday new checks would be required on goods entering Northern Ireland after Brexit, but tempers flared with the European Union over the lack of progress in trade talks. In a new document, Britain set out how it plans to implement special trading arrangements for the province agreed with Brussels in their divorce deal last year. It emphasizes there must be no new physical customs infrastructure after a post-Brexit transition period ends December 31st. To keep Northern Ireland's border with EU member Ireland free-flowing. Via remote, I'm Robert.